been backpacking, camping, and building fires since I was 15, so more than 30 years. And I wanted to do this class because I did not see very much um, by way of fire safety. So just like I get my first aid CPR certification, I want to see classes like this available. As a disclaimer, this course is for informational purposes, and we're not licensed or anything for fire safety, but again, it was a course that I saw that there should be a need for it, and so that's what I've done. I've kind of created what I envision it to be. I'm going to cover a lot of information, and I'm using the Washington State Outdoor Preschool Pilot Standards because it's the only American outdoor preschool standards that I could find regarding fire safety. I'm going to cover a lot of ground. In the course description, there was a lot of resources, PDFs, and that kind of thing. So there is a slide if you want to look at the bullet points and follow along with me. Otherwise, I'm not going to do any screen sharing. I am in my actual space where we actually sit with children and have fires. And so I wanted to kind of share what my space looked like and give you an idea of what we do. So I want to say that the objective for this class is to list 3 or more components of a safe fire pit. I will give you more than 3. List 2 or more protocols for children that they should follow around a fire. I'll give you more than 2. We will define the term active supervision, and we will describe a safely extinguished fire pit. So I will start with and end with the term active supervision. Again, this comes from Washington State standards for their pilot preschool programs. And this is it. I'm going to read it to you. Means a heightened standard of care beyond supervision. This standard requires an outdoor preschool provider to see and hear the children they are responsible for during higher risk activities. The provider must be able to prevent or instantly respond to unsafe or harmful events. I interpret this to mean that anything that I would do due diligence for, I would go above and beyond that. So I'm not just doing playground duty here. I am here to stop a child from falling in the fire pit. I'm here to catch a child who's running and tripping and any other possible things that could go wrong. I'm also making sure that the fire doesn't spread, and I'll go into some of my safety features that I keep here for that. But again, the active supervision part is the most important part, because no matter how safe your fire pit is, no matter how many safety protocols you teach the children, no matter how much fire extinguishers you keep around, someone will get hurt if you are not actively supervising them. So my goal for you is to know that if you are going to have a fire around young children, you're going to be hyper alert, that you're going to be very vigilant in watching the fire and the children. It helps to have a partner. Lee and I work together and we communicate very well, so that if I'm around the fire, that's my job, that's my station. I stay here and I'm guarding it, protecting it, and tending it, and making sure that it's safe at all times. So that's the most important part of the class. But from there, I'll go right into some of the features of what I consider a safe fire pit. If you look at my fire pit, I have landscaping stones. There's lots of different things. I was at a campground with a metal ring. Those are great. Inside the fire pit, I have 12 inches of gravel. And around the fire pit, I've put stones and patio stones so that I've got about 4 feet clean around it. We do use wood chips, so I sweep off this every morning before I light a fire, and keep it very clean and clear, because it's very important that you have no debris around it. Over here, I have stump seats. So these stump seats don't move. They're permanent, and that's helpful in the sense that nobody's scooting their chairs closer to the fire. If the children want to warm themselves around the fire, we encourage them to not sit on their knees. Older children, I think knees are good, but with preschool children, they tend to topple. So on the bottom, if they want to warm themselves up around the fire. right? They're gonna sit on their bottoms, and that's the safest place for them. We also, I'll get into protocols with the children, but I wanted to cover that. We avoid loose clothing. Sandals and open-toed shoes are no good. My wood pile is over here, and I keep it tarp. It's no more than 3 feet high. We've got a snake. He's our guest. Maybe we're his guest. So clean seasoned firewood is very important. Firewood that's not seasoned tends to pop and snap and shoot sparks out. So clean seasoned firewood is very important. When an existing fire pit isn't available, if anybody's ever done any no trace camping, that's what I highly recommend. You want to dig it about 1 foot deep, no bigger than 3 feet in diameter. You want to avoid surface roots. You want to surround it with a circle of rocks. Again, you're clearing all the debris around it that could be flammable. 15 feet is the safe zone, right? So we're gonna go out pretty far. And when possible, what I do when I'm doing no trace camping is I'm using a shovel, I'm cutting that sod out, cutting underneath it, and saving the sod under a bush. And then when we're done, we can scatter our completely extinguished ashes and put the sod back. And I've done it very successfully where you can come back a week or 2 or 3 later and you can't tell there was ever a fire there. So if you are in a situation where you don't have a permanent fire pit to have with the children and you're going out into the woods and you are going to be building a fire from scratch, then it's very important that you make sure that there's no trees above you or around and that there's not any surface roots to catch on fire. Again, in the resources, I've got a fire pit diagram that I can kind of show you. It pretty much is just a map of what I've got going on here, but it works very well. Pause here and see if there's any questions. Has anybody asked any questions yet?
Nope, there's no question.
Okay, well, I'm going to keep plowing forward, and we'll save time at the end where we can open it up and have more of a conversation about it. With risk assessment, we always want to make sure that we're considering the weather. So you don't want to light a fire when it's been too dry or when it's too windy, because both situations can help the fire get out of control. We're going to always clear debris, and we're always going to make sure, this is some of the things that are important. We're going to make sure that we have some safety things going on. So for me, I've got a bucket, and when I'm, it's empty right now, but when I'm not having the fire, I can keep my fire extinguisher, and I've got a fire blanket. So these are great for putting out small fires, but they can also be used to wrap around somebody if they catch on fire, and it helps smother the fire instantly. Again, first aid CPR certification is very important because this isn't going to do anything but help put the fire out. But I've got it right here, and when I'm not having a fire, I keep it in my bucket. I have a bucket here of water, and that is year-round, but if you're talking winter time, it'll get cold, it'll freeze. So if you don't have fresh water, the next best thing is a bucket full of sand. So I have a bucket of sand. If you have a fire that gets out of control and you dump a bucket of water on it, it can spark and sputter and throw flames. So you have to be careful when you're putting out a fire that you do it slowly and carefully. And finally, we're in my home, and I've got a garden hose.
Somebody wants to know if you have a recommendation there in a windy area, and do you have a recommendation for mile-per-hour winds? What's your threshold?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know on that. I'm not going to lie. I say, generally speaking, the smaller the fire, the safer. And if you're talking, gusts, the gusts getting up to 20 or 30 miles per hour seems like that'd be going pretty fast. I think probably 10 or less. But if you're in a windy area, like we get windy days here, and I usually avoid having a fire. So if you're in a place that has wind a lot of the time, that's something that you should maybe check locally, because I don't have a threshold on that. I will make a note though, because like I said, I wanted to do this because there doesn't exist anything already, and so these are all things that are good for consideration.
Cheryl wants to know regarding supervision. If a teacher is teaching a lesson K through 5 grades, is it possible for that teacher to also have a fire in a pit while students are seated on stumps?
Ages K through 5, I'd say yes. I'd say an assistant is always desirable.
And to have a lesson beforehand on fire
Well,
safety.
you definitely want to teach the kids. You want to do a dry run. You want to make sure you've taught them all the things that you can teach them about how to behave around a fire. We'll kind of get into that too, but I'd say you would have done an introductory lesson. You would have done a dry run, and then the third time you would say, okay, we're actually going to do it, and then everybody would be walking, sitting, and then you would be able to conduct that lesson with the children. K through 5 is a good age because they tend to be able to retain a lot of that information and comply. So it's important that if you have any kids that are difficult or who like to experiment or have impulse control, that you have an assistant nearby to help you with that. Because like I said, with Lee and I'm the vigilant around the fire, and if somebody falls and skins their knee, and as much as I want to run and help them, I will stay at the fire and she will go and help them. So in that case, you know, having an assistant's very good because you need to have somebody who can always stay with the fire. If you have a small group of children, I think you could probably pull that off safely. I'm looking here, welder's gloves are very useful to have. I do have them. I use them if I'm cooking with the Dutch oven. A lot of times the welder's glove, I'll use a metal hook or my welder's gloves to get things like that. So they're very useful to have. Always have a first aid kit nearby. So we just took our first aid CPR certification. And if there was a fire safety certification, I would love to hear about it. But like I said, I don't see that. So, you know, outdoor educators, we are looking for that, especially here in America. The knowledge is very important that you teach those kids exactly what you expect from them and exactly how to behave, and that you test them. So with the way our fire pit is set up, the kids aren't allowed to walk through here. So if I'm coming from my sandbox and I'm headed over towards the slide, I'm right here to say, whoa, 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 are you coming in to sit down? No, I'm going to the slide. Then I make them leave and walk around. So they have to go around, and pretty soon it just becomes second nature. They don't even think about it. But when they come into the fire pit area, there really is nowhere for them to go but these two little spots right here they can walk in. And they can come from either end. But once they're in here, I ask them to sit. Of all my stumps and play spaces all around the yard, they can climb, they can jump, they can do all kinds of stuff. They're not allowed to stand on these stumps. These are for sitting only, and I just maintain that policy. So if I see, it's real easy, especially for the way mine's built, for them to want to do this. They love doing this, and it's such a natural, it comes right off the ground, but they're not allowed. So these are not for sitting, and we maintain that policy. We have to remind them all year. But every time I do, pretty soon I get to where I do it less and less and less, and they learn. And that's really important because it can't be a play climb space around the fire pit. Even if it's not lit, it's the same policy because there's rocks and stuff, and it's just not the best space for that. And really, I'm kind of getting close to the end.
It's 4:15.
I went through it fast because I didn't know how long it was.
Can you show them? I know we don't have our Dutch oven out, but can you show them our tripod and sort of talk about how we cook? We cook snack pretty regularly. We have morning snack outside, and it's always one of the children's favorite things to have oatmeal or rice. Rice is the favorite, just plain rice with some Bragg's is all of their favorite, cooked over the fire.
So my legs are close to the fire pit area, and it's sturdy, you know, and it can hold the weight of a Dutch oven. This is a really good tripod, and it's, you know, one of our favorite things. And again, the kids, they do love almost anything cooked over the fire. especially rice. I was surprised how easy it is to make. And I'll make so much rice and it'll get eaten, as much rice as I make. So yeah, we do love cooking with the tripod and the Dutch oven.
So we have our fire pit kind of designed so we call it like the hearth of our playscape. And in the morning when people are dropping off, I will be around. I'm going to go slow kind of so you can see, but we have a mud kitchen over this way, and then our fire pit, and then we have some picnic tables, and over here we have a circle of stumps that we do our circle, and then there's more like a slide and tunnels, and then up here we have zip lines and boats and play structures, but at the center is the hearth. And
It's
what
almost a big triangle.
what we've found with the hearth and the fire is that often children will interrupt their play to make sure that they know where the adults are and that they're in a safe space. So if they look over and Mr. J is always at the fire pit, even if it's a hot day like today and we don't have a fire, Mr. J is located right around the fire. That way we don't have to interrupt their play. When they're at the sand pit and they look over and see Mr. J, they know where he is, they feel safe, and they continue playing. If he wasn't here, they would get up from the sand pit, they would run and try to find him, and then their play has been interrupted. And so we have really found that having the fire pit in our outdoor classroom is sort of the center of our classroom, and it's sort of our gathering place when the children need us.
And I am doing, monitoring the children from where I'm sitting right here, where I'm standing. I can see every child at these four main stations. So it's a great place for me because I have a little fire going. I have a couple kids warming here, and I can see kids in the sandbox. I can see kids over here at these sinks. I can see a couple of kids at the slide, and I know that Miss Lee is out there with them, but I can also see them myself. So this is a really good, we've kind of built everything off of this space so that we had it.
The tripod came from
Your mom.
Outdoor World, though,
Yeah.
which is just like a Menards. It's called Outdoors World, but it's cast iron, so it's really nice, and we have a cast iron Dutch oven to use with it.
We'll talk briefly about fire safety plan. I want to talk briefly about a fire safety plan. So we always have a game plan in mind. So if Miss Lee,
Sorry, you guys.
oh, we have a little. Here we go. It's all good. Back to the meeting. I don't know if you can hear us. Here we go. We're back.
Sorry.
That's okay. A little technical difficulty. You're gonna have to face it like this. So fire safety plan. I am basically going to be fighting any fire that escaped out of the fire pit, and she is basically going to be ushering the children to safety. We have that game plan in mind, and it's already been prearranged so that we don't have to think about it in the moment. When you're thinking about it in the moment, you're going to panic. You're both going to want to put the fire out. The children are going to be unattended, and that's not safe either. So you have to have all this stuff planned out. Know your role and know what the other person's role is so that you don't have to figure that out in the moment. And there's not a, you do this, no, I do this. And so we just know right up front what everybody's doing. So there really is communicating ahead of time and having that fire safety plan before you get started is great. We've never had to use it. We probably never will, but you've got to have that in place just in case.
Somebody's asking if we've ever used a Kelly kettle. I don't know what a Kelly kettle is.
I know what a Kelly kettle is.
Okay.
I've seen them. I saw somebody use one once. It's a small portable wood fire. So it's similar to a camp stove, but you're using actual fire. And the way it's built is that convection sucks air in, but cooks real hot. You can boil water and stuff with just small wood and stuff. I love it. I think that that's a great idea. I think that if you have one of those and you're using it with children, it needs to have a if you're out in the woods, then you need to set down your first aid bag and create a space around it that's safe, and then have this be where it's going to be, and it's not portable once you start to use it. And again, if you have two adults, ideally speaking, depending on how many children you have, one is there and they're in charge of the fire, and the other one's in charge of kind of making sure the children don't run off and that they're doing their safe things. So I think the Kelly kettles look really cool. We don't use them here. Our forest is a city park. We have 1,500 acres, but it belongs to the city. So we're not building fires in the park. We're building fires right here on our school land. So
Brett wants to know, do you rehearse the fire safety plan like a fire drill with the children?
that's a great question. I think that it doesn't hurt. I think that you should do it. It's different than the fire safety drills that you would have at a school where everybody's leaving the building. But I think it's a great idea. You would have a code word, and you would say, fire drill, and everybody would run and find Miss Lee, right? That would be the idea, because usually I'm here at the fire and I would be fighting the fire. So that would be a great thing to practice with the kids. Fire drills are something that help because it's just that same thing where if you've already know ahead of time what to expect and it's not a new thing when it happens, there's a lot less chance for things to go wrong. That was a really good question. I'm making notes because if I ever do this again, I'd like to make it even better, because I tried to cover all the bases. I did a lot of research. There's a lot of resources on the description page, but I mean, there's always going to be something that I don't think of. The final part that I wanted to cover was how to extinguish the fires completely. You never want to leave a fire unattended. You don't even want to leave coals, because a little breeze will get that coal going and it can spread the fire when you've left. So it's very important that you know exactly that the fire is out all the way. So if you use water, you pour it slowly so that the embers don't pop out of the fire pit. Because if you pour water in quickly, they will pop out of the fire. You stop and you stir it frequently with a shovel or with something non-flammable. When water's not available, you do this with sand. It's best to burn the fires down to mostly ash so that smoldering logs are not left behind, because I know this from experience. There was a gentleman who was sure that his fire was completely out, but he had taken the logs and stacked them up because they were completely out. He used his bare hands, and still one of the smoldering logs caught the other logs on fire, and there was a small fire that we had to put out because of that. So smoldering logs are very dangerous. When I keep my fires very, very small, and I'm looking at the time and I know that it's time to stop adding wood, and I do try to burn it down to ash as much as possible. You know the fire is properly extinguished when it is cool to the touch. So this means don't stick your hand in there, because if it burns you, you'll be in trouble. You're going to put your hands close to the fire, right? It's still warm. That means there's coals still in there. You need to keep putting it out. When you can't feel it anymore, you're going to put your hands around it closer and closer until you're sure that that fire is completely out. So it's very, very important that there's no embers present when you leave that fire.
Allison would like to know, do you have fires during free play too, or is it only when kids are sitting together at the fire circle?
Excellent question. We very often, in a typical day when it's kind of chilly out, we will have the fire going, small but good, active warming fire, and they can come and warm by it, but they have free play, so they're preschoolers, and a lot of it is about play, and we try to give them a safe place to play. So they're running around playing, their hands get cold in the sandbox, then they come over and they sit on the ground and they warm their hands up, and then they go back and play again. So we do have the fire going during
We may also put, if you can look on the edge of our fire pit, we, not the children, but we will often put mittens along the edge that are very wet to while the kids are drying their hands, to let the mittens kind of warm up and dry as well. Mittens are by far the biggest struggle in the cold weather to keep children. They don't want to wear mittens. I'm sure most of you guys have experienced this.
But so, and then I'm going to circle around and kind of talk about active supervision for a final time before we open it up to more discussion, because I'd love to hear what situations you guys are in. Because I'm curious, because with us, this is a permanent spot. We have this permanent fire. I've built it over time because of its location and because of the materials that I had available to me. And it works very well for us. But I'm interested in what other situations there
And
are.
Drew, our moderator, is going to put a poll on. There it is. How many participants use fire in their teaching? So that's nice
Great,
to
thanks,
know.
Drew.
Yeah. And we'll look at that in a minute.
But no matter how safe or how careful you are, um, no matter how many protocols you put into place or how many lessons you teach the children about being safe, how many fire drills you run, all of those things, active supervision is the most important thing. And I love that the Washington standards uses that in a lot of their things, because as an outdoor educator, I know that I have parents who have asked me, well, what do you do in this situation? What do you do in that situation? And what they need to know is that I am watching every child and ready to catch them before they fall. I am ready to, do whatever I have to do to keep them safe. And it's not recess duty, because I've done recess duty and you can sit and chat with the other teachers and get real relaxed and you're just kind of scanning and making sure everything's safe in the playground. When we're outside and they're climbing on stumps and they're running through the woods and they're doing all these different things, it takes a heightened sense of standard of care that we want to really, really be watching what they're doing. And I want to be able to move in and avoid any possible problems before they happen. So to me, that active supervision has been the greatest phrase that I've learned, and I've embraced it. And it's the Washington State standards. I recommend you look them up. A lot of the stuff that I based this on came from those Washington State standards, but I did look at like the Boy Scouts and Smokey the Bear and, Sierra.com and a couple other things like that too. So there's a lot of good information out there. But the standard of care is super important, that we're actively supervising the kids. And our other co-host,
Puck is our donkey. You can hear him. Sorry, he'll stop in a minute. He's very, very loud.
there he goes.
He's really missing our children. So Cheryl would like to know if you would recommend a fire under a tarp. If yes, how high should the tarp be?
Good question. The tarp should be probably 15 feet high. If you're going to make a tarp, you want it very, very high, and you want a very, very small fire. Tarps, they're plastic. They can catch on fire. They can be dangerous. So if you're going to do something like that, I have seen safe situation with a small fire under a big tarp that was up really high, but you want to make sure that that tarp is up probably 15 feet. That means you have to climb up the tree somehow, or get somebody to help you sit on their shoulders. You want to throw a rope over a branch or something so that you can get those ropes up high enough, because you don't want to have a big fire under a tarp at all. A very small fire, I think, is completely reasonable, but it'd have to be.
Colton says waxed canvas tarps are a good option as well.
Okay. So I mean, plastic is generally what I use, but yeah, wax canvas tarps are more expensive.
Cheryl says yes, just a warming fire.
Yeah.
That's all she's looking at. Somebody wants to know how many kids we have at one time in this space.
6 to 8.
6 to 8. Our space could definitely hold 12, but licensing permits 6
so
to 8.
We're limited. We're limited on our capacity. And that's actually a benefit for us, because we're able to give that heightened standard of care, because it's only 3 or 4 kids per person in that case.
So interesting, our poll, I'm going to turn it off here in a minute. 64% of the participants said no, we do not use a fire, and 36% said yes, we do.
Okay.
So somebody said that they're just going to start, and so this was perfect timing.
Okay, great. I love that. I think that the outdoor education movement's growing. It's growing quickly, and fire is going to be a part of that. And it's interesting, when I tried to do research, there's lots of stuff in the UK and in Australia and in the Nordic countries, Sweden and Norway and places like that, where it's just, Holland, I mean, it's normal to have kids around a fire. America, we're so risk averse. So, you know, I think that what we have to be as outdoor educators in America is we have to heighten that safety feature to help ease those fears that people have. People are going to be afraid to have their kid around a fire. And so what we have to do is make sure that there's no danger there. You know, there are risks involved in anything that we do, and that we just need to make sure that we're taking all the precautions possible, which includes teaching the children how to behave around a fire. It includes having safety features, having a safe fire pit.
Somebody wants to know if we let the kids roast with sticks.
No, I don't really. We have preschoolers, and maybe mom and dad let them stick a stick in the fire at home or in the campground, but I don't let the kids.
We have let older campers.
When we have a summer camp with grade school kids, there's been a marshmallow roasting component. With the little kids, what I'll do is I will allow them to throw a stick into the fire if they ask. When they do it unasked, when they don't ask, they generally lose the privilege. If they ask and it's appropriate, then I say yes. If I'm building the fire, or I'm letting the fire die down, or I'm cooking, or there's some reason no, I say no. And if it's appropriate and it's acceptable, then I say, yes, you may. Thank you for asking. And then they very carefully throw the stick into the fire. If it doesn't make it, I will help them try it again. I don't let them try to get that stick and try to get it into the fire. I'll help them. So very hands-on with that. They do want to participate. I do want them to participate. And that is a good way for them to do it. If they come with a giant log, of course, I'm going to say no. They come with a stick and it's okay, yes. So sometimes there might be a stick with yarn around it. And I would say, no, you can't do that. There's yarn. So there's different reasons why I would say no. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Lee. I just switched it over to me to answer this next question because it's my favorite. Somebody asked if we have fires with family. Our school is relatively small. Last year we had 16 families altogether. This year we'll have 11 or 12. It just depends on how many kids it takes to fill that space. We love community events, and we pride ourselves on creating community. A lot of times when people are joining preschool programs in particular, it's the parents' first journey of joining in together with other people and raising their children. We hold several events throughout the year. We do a jack-o'-lantern walk right around Halloween, and we have a nature trail. I would love for you all to be here to see it. We have a nature trail that goes through honeysuckle that we've kind of made and tunneled through, and then there's some large trees in there too, and a little runoff creek. And we light our nature trail with jack-o'-lanterns, maybe up to 20. I think we've done like 20 pumpkins. And then we might even hang glow sticks through our trail. And right at sunset, we'll have the families come. The kids have helped all week carve the jack-o'-lanterns. We usually make a scarecrow, and we'll have them all come. We'll walk the nature trail so they can see all their pumpkins lit up, and then end at a big fire down at our fire pit. And these are really wonderful community events. We usually have it be a potluck where people bring food to share. We usually cook hot apple cider over the fire and maybe popcorn or something. And then we have another one, which is my absolute favorite event for the whole year. We celebrate winter solstice here. We have people from all different backgrounds and religions, but being an outdoor school, winter solstice is just a given. So winter solstice, which is, usually right around December 21st, it's cold, but we light our nature trail with holly and candles, lots of them, and it's pretty magical. Some years it snowed. And then we'll walk down through the nature trail and end at the fire pit. And oftentimes that is not a potluck because it's too cold, but we might just have snacks available, and families always want to bring snacks to share. And it's just really a lovely thing. We also do maypole dancing in the spring, and we'll have a fire during our maypole dancing too. But once again, even during these community events with parents here and family here, Mr. J does not leave the fire. So he's on it even when other parents are here.
Because that's a weird time. It's a weird time when you have parents on site because then I don't feel like, I'm the child's parent anymore. I don't feel like I'm in charge. Mom and dad are in charge. But with the fire, yes, always, always, always there to encourage kids to walk the long way around. If they're going to come in, they're walking, they're sitting, and they're being still. I play the ukulele. I'll play songs around the fire. We'll tell stories around the fire and all of that good stuff. The kids can come and go as they like as long as they're walking. And I stop and interrupt whatever I'm doing if they're not, because that's, again, with the heightened standard of care, I'm watching them. And if they're not doing something in the protocol, they need to be reminded constantly. So we're constantly revisiting those rules and constantly reminding them of that. So
Somebody's asking how we do the candles for Solstice Walk. I put them all on stumps and they're in glass jars.
yeah, maybe a little sand in the bottom of
the
the
children
jar.
make lanterns that they carry on our Solstice Walk, and we actually let them carry they take usually glass jars, and we'll either decoupage tissue paper on it, or once we use leaves that we had saved from the fall, but we'll decorate some kind of glass jar, and then we tie it to a stick, and the parents walk with their children, but the children walk with their candles, and it's sort of sacred and it's special, and they are really reverent about it and are proud of themselves for being allowed to have that responsibility of walking with the candles. So,
and that is primarily mom or dad who are walking with them when they are carrying that candle. But yes, it's it's an exciting thing, and they do, you give kids the opportunity to do things like that when they show that they're responsible, and it's pretty cool. It's fun to watch.
Somebody's asking us what we're going to do about COVID.
Gosh, I mean, that's a whole nother session. We have built an outdoor space that is covered, similar to a carport, off of our small building that we hold our school in. So there is gravel under that, and we've got people are coming in on one side and they're exiting on the other, so that we have a rotation going, and there's some social distancing going on. Mom and dad can come in, help unload stuff, and then move on out the other way while the kid stays with us. I'm going to be honest with you, we start in a few weeks and we haven't done it yet. So it's going to be a learning curve for all of us. We are going to, we built hand washing stations for outside. We have 3 of those. And those are nice. I'd love to share those with you. But again, that's a whole nother class. Yeah.
So I'm going to switch it back over to me again. People are asking for our story. I'm going to give a very shortened version. I worked at the Cincinnati Waldorf School for many, many years and was so incredibly happy there. I have older children. I have a 23-year-old and a 19-year-old. And when I found out that I was expecting and was pregnant, I decided that I wanted to stay home with my child. And so Little Schoolhouse in the Woods sort of formed because I needed to stay home with my baby. And I took some of the children that I was caring for at the Waldorf School to here on my property, and immediately thought, what is so different when I'm here on this space versus Waldorf School? Waldorf School is beautiful. We spent, half our day outside, but there was still something so different, and I watched the children kind of flourish and grow in a new way. And I realized that it was just not an institution, and that no matter how wonderful we make institutions, they're institutions. And so we sort of just started growing from there. Jason and I took a class together, Farm and Forest Kindergarten at Sunbridge Institute in New York, which is a Waldorf training for farm and forest. And our program has just kind of evolved. We are on our own property. We call it the Little Schoolhouse because we have built a little schoolhouse, and Jason just told you we put an overhang now that we'll have this year. And we have 2.5 acres and are surrounded, we're really fortunate that we're surrounded by a huge city park where we have, 1,500 acres of trails at our disposal, right? We hike almost every day with the children into Mount Airy. Our little nature trail ends up in a city park trail, and we can just kind of go. There's huge creeks that we can walk on, and Jason and I both are kind of nuts and just really love the landscaping part of it all. So we kind of have evolved from there.
Yeah, I would say that it was a, her teaching young children here really changed me as well because,
I can't make it flip again.
oh, okay.
Just hit admit. Sorry, guys.
So what you're trying to do
Yeah,
is,
flip it and then
oh,
tell me.
there you go. Hi. All right. So I did the midlife career change. I was driving a truck for the thrift store, and I wanted something more meaningful and sustainable. And I knew that if I wasn't able to do outdoor education, that there was plenty of room for me in the public classroom. I enjoyed the public classroom. Absolutely nothing against public education. I felt like with time I would become a stellar public school teacher. But the truth is she kept calling me to come do this, and I absolutely love it. I love being outdoors. I love being with little kids, and kind of give them the childhood I never got, as far as playing outdoors and stuff. And I see them thrive. And what's cool about it is I'm learning too. So it's not just teacher teaching the children, but also I'm learning from them, and I'm learning about myself, and I'm learning about nature with them. So it's so much fun. It's just great.
We do not have a license. We are covered under our home insurance, but that is why we are limited to children. We would take definitely up to 12 children if we weren't limited by licensing protocol.
We did become a nonprofit. We are looking at, and this is what I'm hoping to see change, is that those standards, just like Washington State got those standards for outdoor for the pilot preschool program, is that there be something like that in Ohio where we can get an alternative licensure, because we don't match the typical daycare situation. And so we're excited about the outdoor education movement. It's just going to keep growing, and there's going to be something like that in the next few years, and we're ready to be part of that.
Somebody's asking to see our mud kitchen, so I'm going to walk over here.
It's not.
Mind you, we have not worked since March, so our kids are coming back August 24th, and so we're still kind of in process of fixing things up a little bit. We just got some huge stumps delivered, which I'm really excited about. But this is our mud kitchen. We have a hose that reaches down here, so we fill up the sink for the kids. When it's warm, we had to set guidelines, so it's 60 degrees or above. And then they have pots and pans, and we have this little table and chairs. This space endlessly holds the children's attention. We have nature trails, zip lines, tunnels,
This is a very popular spot too.
but the sand pit mud kitchen holds the children's attention. I'm sorry, it was tarped.
So I won't cover the whole thing, but it's a big
we
round.
have the pink tub in the middle is all their toys, which are just kitchen utensils and pots and pans. You can tell it hasn't been used. It's got mushrooms and stuff that'll need to be cleaned out in the next week. So that is our mud kitchen, and you can see from here. I don't know if when I move around a lot, you guys, I'm cutting out, so I'm sorry about that. That's the entrance to our nature trail. Do we have problems with ticks? We have not. Knock on wood, we have not. We do struggle with mosquitoes in the fall and in the spring, and we will definitely struggle with chiggers this year, because for some reason chiggers are out in full force. And we ask the parents to supply bug spray, and everybody has preferences on what they want on their child, and so we just ask the parents to, that's part of their school supply list. Here we cook up, we put a lot of things we're cooking on. We're building a marble countertop right here. Yeah, I'm doing a tour. This is our circle. So in the mornings, that chair is not there usually. This is where, when we want attention, like kids will be dropped off from 8 to 9, and when we want to call in circle, we'll say, make a circle, make a circle. And they all have a designated stump. So that's our circle spot.
Yeah.
I can't read your chat from here.
That's okay. So we love what we do, and fire is a big part of that. And when I was looking at all the things, the other class that we wanted to teach was circles and songs, because we love seasonal circles and songs. That's kind of the pillar of what we do. We talk a lot about singing songs and playing hand games, motion games, and telling stories and all of that good
Somebody
stuff.
saying with your water for your fire water, you'll have to switch it out a lot because of mosquitoes?
Well, the 5-gallon bucket has a lid on it, so there's no mosquitoes getting into it because the lid fits on there really tight. The water bucket is really for when that hose isn't running. So for instance, if it's too cold for the hose and I can't have my hose, I have that bucket and I can bring it down from inside the basement or inside the garage and carry it down. It's got a lid on it, and I can keep the lid on it for when the weather's warm enough that there would be mosquitoes. So I don't have to worry about mosquitoes in it. The lid keeps them out.
That's a good idea. Somebody saying thinking about catching the wastewater from their outdoor hand washing stations for the fire and then putting the lid on it. That's a great idea to reuse that water.
Use your gray water that you don't want to use anyway for anything else. Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
Yeah. Is there any more questions that we can answer?
Fire safety related, or fire incorporating fire, or
anything,
or even like with the candle, we do a blessing with our candle, and the children, she picks a different child each time to snuff it, and so the children get to snuff the candle at the table. The candle's indoors, not outdoors. So.
Do you have any fire songs you like to sing?
Oh, fire songs. I don't have any fire songs. Now you're going to make me go and find one, though. I have my typical songs that I sing to the kids.
Jason plays the guitar and the ukulele and is constantly singing for the children and playing the guitar.
No, a fire song, though, that seems like it seems necessary now that you've said it. Yeah. How have I not had one before now?
Somebody said, do you have tips on fire starters? I've seen egg cartons, lint, wax, wick creations.
So this has been my new thing. I've been very excited to try new fire starting. It's much harder than you think. Like I said, I've been doing backpacking and camping for 30 plus years, and just a cheap fire starter from the grocery store is awesome. Everybody, I love them. But that being said, I have found online you can take a piece of cotton and put Vaseline or petroleum jelly on it, and you want to fluff it up as much as possible, and you get one of those flint fire starters, and you can start a fire that way. Is a good way to start a fire. Really, and this is something that you might do with your preschoolers with the a lesson plan would be to teach them the difference between tinder, kindling, and fuel. So the tinder is usually the hay and the grass and the stuff that catches very easily. And then the kindling is the smaller sticks and twigs that you would put on that. And, it's just one of those practice makes perfect. If you really want to build a fire from scratch and you want to use the striker and use the sparks to light it, then you are going to be practicing a lot, because the barometric pressure changes in the morning and in the evening, and it makes it very difficult to start a fire at certain times of the day.
So it is 10 till 5. I will stay here to answer questions, but I do want to let everyone know it is 10 till 5. So if you are signed up for any sessions after that,
it might be time
to go, but Jason classes. And I can stay and answer
more questions.
We'll
stick around and keep answering your questions.
Jill, I love that song. No, Aaron said that, Rise Up, O Flame, and I forgot that song, Rise Up, O Flame. I'm not going to sing it because I'm not a singer.
You teach it to me, though.
It's a Waldorf song I know from that.
Okay.
Do you ever use a bow drill?
Oh, now that's another way to start a fire. No, but now that you said it, I'm going to try. We have honeysuckle galore here. Everything's honeysuckle, and they're real bendy. So I could take a piece of hemp twine and a piece of honeysuckle and bend it and make like a bow for a bow and arrow. And then you take another stick and you twist it in there and you run it back and forth. If you can't do it with a bow, sometimes you can do it with a string and another person. So if you have another adult, and then you put that into a wood with a nook so that it sits in there, and you put your tinder and you run it back and forth, and it takes that type of fire starting takes time because you have to get so much friction going. You'll have to sit there and do it for several minutes, and it takes stamina and patience, but you can get the friction enough to catch that tinder.
Shell, I am not going to answer the bathroom situation, but if you want to send me a private message, I will answer it, but I'm not going to answer it right now. but I'm not opposed to answering.
How do we do with the bathroom outside?
Yes,
Yeah.
so a lot of people are saying thank you, thank you.
Oh yes, thank you guys so
It
much.
is definitely possible to try.
This has been very exciting for us to be able to. This conference was supposed to be held here in Cincinnati in person, and so we're
We were a
disappointed.
field trip site.
We were a field trip site. We're excited to share what we've got. We want to show everybody what we're doing because it's just me and her, and we've landed into this lucky spot, and we just love it.
We got our 501c3 status 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, we just found out about that. We're also a wild school site. Lee's working on what is your designation when you graduate from your class?
Oh, Ohio Certified Volunteer Naturalist.
Ohio Certified. I'm a National Geographic Certified Educator. So, you know, we're always looking to learn more about children and development, social emotional health, nature, and all of those good things. This is such a good time to be a part of the outdoor education movement, and it's just going to keep growing. And so I'm excited that you guys took the time out to tune in and learn a little bit about fire safety. I hope that you can safely have fires with children and have lots of fun learning about it. You know,
Somebody said Fatwood is a game changer for easy fire starting.
Fatwood, is that it's a fire starter?
I don't know what Fatwood is.
Yeah.
Colton, we don't know what Fatwood is. Do you just mean large logs?
No, I think it's a
I'll unmute myself. So fatwood is like the heartwood, the sap wood of an evergreen tree. So it's where all of the sap runs back in when a tree is felled and it solidifies in there. So it's like starting a fire with a piece of wood that is saturated with pitch. So it's like a super saturated, easy fire starter.
We don't have evergreen trees around here, but that's amazing.
They did plant some in this forest, but you know what we have is we have the emerald ash borer, and they've killed a bunch of our ash trees. So all of our big dead trees that we have to have felled are ash, which makes a great firewood when it's well seasoned. It's kind of it's literally heartbreaking, but exciting when you have an ash tree fall down, because then I just go cut it up. And
but it does make me want to try the
fatwood. Yeah. Okay, so now I know what it is.
Thanks, Colton.
Yeah, that's excellent.
Somebody asked if there are other schools like ours in the area. So
nobody's like us.
We are unique in the fact that we work from our home. There is the Cincinnati Nature Center, and they're on this conference too and teaching some classes as well. And they're a larger organization than us. They work in a place that is called the Cincinnati Nature Center, and it's protected forest, Row Woods. It's amazing.
It's huge. It's beautiful. Yeah. They have an outdoor playscape that was man-made and fenced in for people who honestly maybe are new to hanging out in the woods with their kids, and maybe they don't want their kids to hang out down in the creek because
we
of glass.
would go there. It's so pretty.
Yeah, it's so nice.
And then there's also Arlet, which is an offshoot of the University of Cincinnati, where they do a preschool program there, and they're nature-based. They're inside, and they're actually on the University of Cincinnati's campus, but they have a really nice playscape. It's a beautiful playscape.
There's rumors that there's going to be a preschool at the zoo.
And there's rumors that there will be a preschool at the zoo. And then there are, I mean, for one that I know is like Shine Nurture Center, and they are a licensed Head Start program, but they try really hard to get their children outside as much as possible. They don't have quite as much freedom as we do. So I'm thinking that might be it on questions. If anybody has any more and you want to unmute, please feel free to.
Yeah, thanks guys. All these questions were so good. I hated not having the answers to everything, but fire drills is a great idea. We should be practicing fire drills. Mm-hmm. We do talk about it and discuss it with the kids, but we don't practice them. So
yeah, I would be interested to work with you to try and cover more ground. I mean, our program runs Monday through Thursday with 4 different groups of kids. So I have the opportunity to build a fire at least twice a day. And most weeks I end up building 8 fires. So like I'm doing it daily with 8 children. So if you have any questions or want to group up and try and flush this out more, I'm more than happy to jump in on that with you.
Oh, that's awesome. Where are you located?
I'm south of Seattle, Washington,
Okay.
and we are
Cool.
also on private land. So I have the ability to build fire pits at each of the unique camps. We have almost 20 acres, so they're spread out. And each environment kind of has over time earned its own dedicated fire area. And so I have much experience with that, but I would be
That's
interested
awesome.
to
We
Yeah,
tell
should
you
we
honestly
should
what you do.
definitely connect and continue building it, because I feel like the more nature schools are growing and outdoor schools, and then COVID has just pushed us. I think where I just spent the morning with my daughter's public school in Cincinnati public school working on how to build outdoor classrooms.
Mhm.
But this movement is like, if anything, COVID has just helped it along. I mean, if we can think of anything positive through this. And
Yeah.
so let's build a course.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I think the like the course side of it, right? Where you provided the resources, but having that practical, like, I've done this and it has worked, and I've also done this and it hasn't worked. Like your area that the fire is set up in is very similar to how I do it, but I just take like 8 or 10-foot log sections and lay them as a speed bump, so that if you enter this zone, you now know no running, no horseplay. And same
Right.
thing, ask permission before adding things to the fire. And if not, then that's, we being the fire keepers do have final say. And if you can't follow those guidelines, then I guess that's a loss of privilege in a way, where you don't get to interact with the fire. And
yeah, you have physical boundaries that actually delineate where the safe space
Yeah.
are, where the fire space. That's awesome. That's great. Super important. I mean, we do that when we go out into the woods, like, don't go past this thing or that thing or the other. So when you
right,
actually just
it's that
drag logs in
visible
and make it.
boundary
Yeah,
equal
that's
to a
great.
physical boundary.
That's
Yeah.
great. You say you have 4 groups of children each day or each week?
We have two classes per day. So I have a morning and an
Okay.
afternoon. So I have
Okay.
4 total unique classes.
And you're making the fire as part of the class, or just having the fire as part of the program, like we are with the warming?
Both. I mean, I am an outdoors person, so you know how that goes, where you're like, oh yeah, you want to learn this skill, I'm willing to teach you this skill. So 2 of my boys that I had last week had ferrocerium rods, and all they wanted to do was shoot sparks, right? So they just want to practice that skill. So started by practicing on a stick to see if they could get the angle proper to remove the bark on a stick before they're given the ferrocerium rod to shoot sparks onto a safe ground space, right? They're not going to start the fire, but it's that building of skill that then can be, later down the line, here's the cotton ball with Vaseline, and
Yeah.
here's a stainless steel bowl for you to light it in, and now try and maintain a small fire within a fire pit. So you don't have to commit from no experience to taking care of a full-blown fire. It's like these incremental,
Yeah.
oh cool, now you know how to
Scaffolding.
light it. Okay,
It's
now let's
scaffolding.
maintain a small
That's
fire.
great.
Okay, now that we have the small fire, let's move into the fire pit. And I'm just there as the moderator, right? Like, if you put on wet sticks, you're going to learn that it doesn't work, and that's kind of the end of it. And I'm not going to fix it for you. It's that learning through experience.
That's great. What age group?
We do 2 to 7.
Okay, great. That's awesome.
So
Yeah, that
it's
is a
very
Colton,
varied.
do you have a way, because you're on here, can you go onto our thing and find our email addresses then? And
Yeah,
send us-
I have you guys open, and I was looking at your website earlier, so
Oh,
I
cool.
can.
Will you send us so we have your connection information?
Yeah, I'll go on
Great.
there and do that right now.
That's great.
Thanks.
That website's overdue for maintenance. Sorry.
No, that's all right.
I gotta go in there and do a little housekeeping, but
It's like
I'll
one of
clean
those
it up.
things, right?
Yeah, it is.
Well, very cool. Yeah, I think this was the first real, like, in-depth course that I've seen on it. Last year, I went to the conference in New Hampshire, and there was only one other course about using tools with kids. So it needs to be talked about because people want to do it,
Yeah.
but it also requires the people that have the experience to be the ones to kind of scaffold that information and get it out there in an effective way. Like, this works and here's why, and this didn't work and here's why.
Yeah, thank you. Because it was for me, I really wanted to be able to take a class like this, and it doesn't exist. So
Hmm.
I was like, you know what? Then that means I've got to teach it, and
Right.
not necessarily that I'm the qualified one to teach it, but like like you said, I have experience. I do it already, and so it was just one of those things like, well, what would it look like? Well, this is what I would want to see if I took a class. So
Yeah, I would be very interested to work on that with you because I think that it's something that A needs to be done, and B, like you and I and anybody doing an outdoor forest school is probably pretty passionate about having kids have that exposure to fire. It's like a primal human thing.
yeah,
You want to interact with it, but how do you facilitate that in a
It's such a community builder. I
reduced
mean,
risk way, right? Because there's always a
right.
risk, but
But
if you can
but
reduce
we're
that to the
managing
point
it.
where you can have a 4-year-old sit by the fire and know the ground rules and
Yeah.
engage with that, then I think more people should be doing that.
Yeah, managing that risk is very important. So, eventually I hope that they do have like a certification same way they do first aid CPR,
Hmm.
because that
I
we're
think
gonna
I
we're
think
gonna get there.
another organization that may have some of that, maybe not necessarily the safety, it may have some component of it, but is Leave No Trace, because they have a big section on fire and how to use fire and how to dispose of all of that. So maybe check them out and see if they have anything on that.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Or
And again, I put yeah.
Knowles would be another one.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you
Yeah.
guys so much.
Yeah.
Are
I'll
we
go
gonna
send you an email.
Yeah, that
thanks.
sounds great. We can connect.
Right on. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Is there anybody else with any last minute questions before we sign off? If you're still in here, thank you so much for sticking around, and we appreciate you listening and watching. We appreciate the questions, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the conference. Have a lot of fun, learn as much as you can.